Welcome to the Fly Culture Podcast, bringing you interviews, reviews and fishing tips. Here's your host, Pete McLeod.
Hi everyone, welcome back to the Fly Culture Podcast. I hope you're well and I hope you're catching some fish too. One of the things I try and do with this podcast is keep it fresh, keep changing it, keep the subjects varied. And I thought today it would be interesting to chat with my guest where we're going to choose some of our favourite water and destinations and talk a little bit what they mean to us and why we've enjoyed fishing them, a little bit along those sorts of lines. So what I've decided is that we would choose 5 from the UK and 5 from overseas and go from there. And I hope you find this really, really interesting. I'm looking forward to catching up and chatting about fishing. And my guest today, I'm pleased to welcome back Pete McLeod from Aardvark McLeod. And we're going to talk a little bit about what's going on as well in the world at the moment, what he's been up to, and then we're going to just talk about fishing that we've really, really enjoyed. So Pete, it's great to have you back on the podcast. How are you doing?
I'm good, thanks, Pete. Thank you very much for offering to have me back. That was a very pleasant surprise. No, I'm cracking.
Good. I'm really pleased to hear that. And it must be, being involved in the travel industry, given the background of everything at the moment, that must have been, I guess the best word I can use is a difficult time for you.
Yeah, I mean, difficult would be an understatement. It's been very tough in the travel industry. As you can imagine, we're now at the point where we're rolling over trips for the second time, which has been a bit tough. And with that comes an enormous amount of extra administration. But, we're surviving. I think the end is in sight. We've got clients who are now beginning to book with confidence into 2022. I think we're going to get the Iceland season this year, which is going to make a massive difference to all of us. And I think we'll get some salt water towards the end of the year. But we were lucky because we live right here in the sort of cradle of Hampshire. We pivoted very, very quickly and got straight back out on the rivers. So, Alex and myself and Ollie and the gang, we've all been out guiding and just doing an enormous amount of chalk stream fishing in the meantime, which has really kept us going.
That's great to hear. And I know we caught up I know we've been trying to tie this one up, and I know you've been incredibly busy to get this one recorded. And it did leave me with a little wry smile when we were exchanging messages at 7:00 in the morning and you were just getting ready for a day's guiding. And as we were talking off mic, I don't miss that one little bit. How's that been, getting back out there and taking people fishing?
It's been fabulous in the fact that I'm back on the water. I'm out on the rivers. I'm with clients. I have the chance to see the season progress through the full season and the different hatches, and I've really enjoyed that aspect of it, and that's been great. The side I haven't maybe quite enjoyed quite as much as I maybe getting a little long in the tooth for this, and yeah, it's really hard work. I know that there's plenty of other guides, such as Mr. King, who's been out on who's much older than I am, but yeah, it is very, very hard work. But it's been really rewarding. So I'm not going to complain at all. And it's keeping me gainfully busy.
Good to hear. And how's the mayfly been?
The mayfly's been phenomenal. Late is my first comment. After all this horrendous sort of late spring that we've had, we were running about 3 weeks late. Mid-May, I was still wearing 3 layers and a pair of waders, which was a bit ridiculous. And then suddenly we went directly from winter to summer. And those poor mayfly, 1 or 2, which had been popping off, suddenly we had an enormous hatch. And most of the places that we've been fishing up and down, the Test and the Anton, have had incredibly prolific spinnerfuls. I think we're kind of coming towards the end of it now, and it's mostly spinners, but it has prolonged, and it's been really, really fantastic.
It's been interesting what you said about the late start to things, and down here it felt as though nothing was ever going to happen. It was, like you say, freezing cold, very, very few rising fish. And I know I did some podcasts from the river, and it was hard going to actually find some rising fish. And yesterday, this one's being recorded on 7th of June. Yesterday, I was out with my friend Perry on a little stream that we love to fish, and I posted something this morning, and it felt as though yesterday the saturation had been turned up. Everything was bright and vivid green. We had some mayflies. We caught fish on mayflies. It was just, like you say, it felt like it was a turning point. We tend to be a little bit behind you as well, but it does feel as though that turning point and that long time and that long lead into some sensible fishing coming along must be, and I know as a former guide, is nail biting when it's tough out there, isn't it?
Oh, it was hard work. We had to mostly concentrate. We had hawthorn coming through in sort of second and third week of May. So at one point we had hawthorn, alderfly, alder beetle, and mayfly all coming off at the same time. And I don't think those poor fish knew what to sort of clue into. But when they did clue into the mayfly, wow. It was a spectacular spinnerful this year. I mean, I think you may have seen a picture on Instagram I posted of my car just covered in spinners, just mental amounts. And when they hit the water, the river just boiled. Very frustrating and also a hell of a lot of fun.
Yeah. After we've done this one, actually, this afternoon, because our rivers have been too big, and I've been swinging flies for salmon, and I was on the river. I'm on the river a lot, but I think it was Thursday or Friday, and I saw some mayflies coming down, and one big fish eat one. So I've got him marked. I'm going to go have a look, see if I can find him a little bit later as well. So we'll see. And our hatch it doesn't seem to be as prolific, but there's enough the fish get locked on, but not enough that, your fly gets lost, sort of thing. So I'm kind of really, really looking forward to that. But thank you for taking the time to talk with me today. I just thought this would be really interesting to talk about fishing, what it means to us. And I think the listeners may well enjoy this, our favourite sort of little spots. And like I said in the introduction, hopefully you've got some destinations in the UK that we can take it in turns. You choose one, then I'll choose one. And we'll kick things off, and then we'll go abroad and see what we fancy there and the places that we've enjoyed to visit. So would you like to kick us off with your first choice from the UK?
My choice is I've started from the bottom and I'm working my way upwards. This was actually quite a challenge for me, Pete, because as you know, most of my fishing has been overseas for quite a long time. So when I sat down and thought about places that I fish in the UK, I've got a couple of places which were very much part of my formative fishing career, and then some which I'm fishing now. So I'm going to start with a tiny little stream up in Norfolk called the River Bure. Which is sort of runs through Blickling, and in my younger years when I used to live up there, it was where my father and I used to go and dry fly fish together. And I have got these wonderful memories of sitting in meadows as the sun is going down and seeing the barn owls, and sitting there with my father watching rises and trying to catch fish as it was practically dark. But that little river holds an enormous sort of a very special spot in my heart. I spent a lot of time there, probably far more time than I should. But it's an interesting little river, and not many people know of Norfolk's chalk streams, but it does have one or two really good ones. And we even got a decent mayfly hatch up there. So that would be the first on my list, if you like.
That's a nice one. And like you say, those Norfolk chalk streams, because I guess the chalk runs all the way up the east side of the country up to about Yorkshire, really, I guess, doesn't it? And there's all those fascinating, not undiscovered, but not so well-known streams that really interest me. And funnily enough, there's one or two in my choice as well that are similar. But like you say, those not so well known and had a great impact on your fishing. Do you get to go back there at all?
I haven't been back for quite a few years. I did go back a little while. My parents left Norfolk about 10 years ago and decided to move to the west coast of Scotland. But in that time, I did used to go back, and it was very much exactly how it was. Nothing had really changed. And it's a lovely little stretch of river that flows through meadows and woodlands. And it was just a great place to cut my teeth on learning how to dry fly fish from a very, very young age. I spent a lot of time in trees and bushes to begin with, but that's all part of the learning curve.
Yeah, absolutely. That sounds my sort of place, I have to say. Interestingly, or boringly, even in my first choice, I'm going to stick very firmly in Devon, the river that I love so much, the Tor, and what that means to me. And like you say, I've been fishing it many, many, many years, and in all its forms, pretty much from where it runs from the moor to the estuary and catching bass all the way through it. And it's not a big name river. It's just a good, honest river that I enjoy. I learn so much from. There's not a big proliferation of fish, so you have to hone your skills. I remember the years where it would just be dry flies, and I would only fish dry flies. And subsequently, I seem to have come back to that now as well. And just changing the way I fish a little bit, really, and waiting for those fish to rise. It may be because I have a little bit more time now as well, but waiting for those fish to rise, cast at them, and sometimes I even catch them as well. But as an aside to that as well, I thought I might throw in as well, Dartmoor, of course, goes without saying, and I've talked many times about it on here, but there's a tributary of the Tor, and again, the pictures I was talking about earlier that I fished with my friend Perry, and it's a tiny little stream, and we were there yesterday, and good, honest little fish, difficult, like you were saying, actually, the challenge of landing your fly in the right place, making the cast. There's not much room. Bow and arrow casts, everything else. It's pretty wild. It's difficult. The fish aren't easy. And it sounds similar to your place in Norfolk. It's really become a really special little stream for me that I enjoy fishing. So, yeah, a wonderful one, but I guess hardly any surprise I'm in Devon. But where are you going to take us to next?
So the next, we're going to go do a bit of salmon fishing. North Tyne, which in my opinion is probably one of the best salmon rivers in England, certainly. And I used to go up there quite a lot in the back end with an old friend of mine called Anthony Luke, who's now living in Norway. Now, Anthony taught me how to use a two-handed rod many, many years ago. He actually appeared in that series, The Take, with Neil Patterson and various other members. And he was my lodge manager when I was working in Norway when I was 16. And I'd never really used a two-handed rod until that point. And he taught me. He's probably forgotten more about spey casting than most of us will ever know. But he used to invite me to go and see him. He had a little place up in Walk, and we would fish the North Tyne, various parts of it, like sort of Chesters and Chip Chase and Bagmer and those Strother. And he had access to a lot of it. And I'd go up there, and that would be my yearly pilgrimage. And this was when, I had clapped out cars, and in fact, actually, I drove one Golf up there, and it broke down, blew up, and then I had to take the train home again. It's still up there somewhere. But those days of swinging small flies through swirly sections and hooking up to really good salmon. I mean, I've always had utmost respect for those Tyne salmon. They're big, they're broad, and they're powerful. And at that time of year, we often got some really good silver fish, which we're going to test you. So that's my sort of second UK spot.
And I think, like you rightly say, that the Tyne, I fished it once on the upper section. There was no water around, and we headed somewhere else. But it's beautiful scenery, beautiful setting. There aren't that. Well, I suppose all the places we cast a fly to salmon and all the other fish are pretty beautiful, but it's a really lovely setting, and like you say, it has the justified reputation that it carries, doesn't it?
And good runs of fish, probably more than most at that time. But yeah, no, it always produced fish, so can't complain. Not here in the UK. So where are we going next, Pete?
We're going to go, for me, up the M5 a bit. And it's interesting, again, what you were saying about these little streams that we don't know so well. And we're going to head into the Malverns, and I guess that's Worcestershire. And when the Wild Trout Trust auction used to come along, you get some wonderful lots on there, obviously. But I used to like to hunt out the weird and wonderful stuff. And I think I got it, Emma used to get it for me for a birthday present, actually, a day's guided fishing with the wonderful Roger Smith, who wrote, I think it's Borderland Flies or something. I think that's the book. But it was the chance to fish the streams that fish off or run off the Malverns. And he, first off, was wonderful, wonderful company, and I got to know him really, really well. And we had a fabulous time, and it was supposed to be a guided day. And I said, come on, let's take it in turn. But it was just a beautiful setting again, wonderful company. The fish, it was funny, even working in fishing, when you're fishing with someone new, I still get a little bit nervous and you worry, oh God, I'm going to miss a fish or whatever. And our fish, I think part of that is because of the fish in Devon.
Do you still not sleep the night before? I still don't sleep. And I'm up at 4. I get so excited.
Yeah. I put a video up recently of a friend watched me catch fish on a dry fly, and we landed it, put it back, and I said, look at my hands. And they were shaking with excitement. Now, I'm old enough to know better, but that's what this thing that we do does to us, isn't it? And what it means to us. Yeah.
It still does it. It still gets you totally overexcited, makes you behave like a kid. And I think many people who've been on the Fly Culture podcast have said the day that stops happening is the day that we stop fishing. And it's what drives us.
Yeah, you're dead right. And, I remember that the first fish, so our fish in Devon, sometimes they'll throw themselves, you miss a fish, whatever might happen. And it was just wonderful. They were just about on mayflies. I remember where we parked, and he said, right, we're going to have a go in here. And I thought, right, okay, let's make this cast. It was I don't know if he was testing me. It was a really nasty cast, and I managed to pull it off and landed the fly down, and it drifted down, and the fish took it. And it was just one of those beautiful takes. Yes, I'll have you. Lift, thank you very much indeed. And the day continued along those sorts of lines. I said, right, that's one for me. You have a go now. And we took it in turns. And he was just such wonderful company. The fishing was wonderful. And I really, really enjoyed it. And I got it again another year. And yeah, it's been nice, and we stay in touch, or we've stayed in touch over the years, and I've really enjoyed fishing with him. So a little bit different, and I think I've tried to bid on some of those places in Norfolk and weird and wonderful places. They really, really interested me that trout are eking out a living in places you might not even necessarily think about. So that's kind of cool. Yeah. So where are you taking us next?
So, now we're going to basically head back to where I am now, because this is where the majority of the fishing that I do these days is based. So it's Hampshire based. And the first place that I'd like to chat about is actually is called Tescombe. Tescombe is on the main test, just above the Mayfly pub. And it is a beautiful piece of sort of mixed fishing through a broad area and then up through some fairly nicely manicured gardens. So you've actually got this wonderful lawn area that in fact actually used to be an old grass tennis court. And a sort of there's a fishing hut there which was built in the 18th century and is where actually King Edward used to shoot down on his train, park there, fish, and then get back on his train and go back up to London. And it's a magical piece of main test. And it's everything that you would encapsulate in your head. Sort of big wide river, lots of weed, lots of ranunculus, and big fish sat in holes, some of which you just can't make them move until a certain hatch occurs, and then you've got your chance. And if you make your chance count, then it works, and if you don't, you've blown it and you've got to move on to the next one. But there's some phenomenal grayling there as well for the winter time. Crystal clear water. So I've really enjoyed spending time there, and learning it and learning its different attributes. So that's where I've spent quite a lot of time. It's lovely.
I sort of know that spot, obviously, because of the Mayfly when you're heading in towards Stockbridge. And the river's a reasonable size there. Is it deep as well, or is it sort of chalk stream depth?
It's deep in section. Yeah, I mean, that main section that you can see as you drive up to the Mayfly on the left-hand side, that's not that deep at all. It's your typical crystal clear chalk with holes in the weed, and every single hole has got a fish holed up in it. It's got a big weed band that runs down the middle of it, and there's always fish tucked up against it. I flew the drone over it, actually, and you could just literally see all these wonderful little spots, pockets, and riffles. So yeah, it's quite spectacular.
Yeah. There's nothing like, is there, seeing the chalk stream or the river for the first time when you arrive on your day and see a bit of river like that you can see the fish. And I love our home rivers as well, but there is something about being able to observe a fish, watch its behavior, see what it's taking, and learn a lot, actually, can't you, by just spending some time and sitting and watching?
You really can. You really can. And I do consider myself incredibly spoiled that this is where I live and this is where I work. And I get to be on these rivers an awful lot. And because I'm mostly guiding, I can observe and to watch fish behavior, watch their reaction to what nymphs they're taking, and literally watch the fish maneuvering and bouncing backwards and forwards in the current, what flies are going to entice it, what flies are not. It is really special. I'm very lucky.
Yeah. Well, while you're talking about the test, I'm going to head down a little way and talk about the Wiley, funnily enough. And I was a member of the Wilton Club for many, many years, and I love to be in a club that will actually let me in, which is encouraging in itself. So I really enjoyed that, and I loved, to me, how that club is run. And the way that they approach things, I think, was really, even when I was a member, was forward thinking. And I know it's different running fishing on a day basis, and running a fishing club, but how they looked at things, how they approach things, they don't stock there. You can wade in there. And they think of the fishing for the benefit of the fish and then the angler first, which I really, really liked with how they would go with that and what they would do. Wonderful hatches there, really, really interesting fishing. And I joined there because my good friend, he's going to crop up in a few of these, Ray, was a member first of all. So I suspect that's how I managed to somehow get in. But I remember what we used to do. We'd get into these really nice rhythms of our fishing days, and at the end of it, we'd sort of pack up gentleman's hours sort of thing. And so we're missing the best bits of it. And I remember hitting a blue-winged olive hatch there, one of the best I've ever seen in my life. If I'd have gone home, I'd have missed it. So what we used to do was go to the Wilton Fish Bar, did some fantastic Chinese as well. We'd grab that, drive back to where we'd fish in the evening, eat that for a bit, and then fish through to 9 o'clock, whenever it was. And then I'd head back.
This is totally typical, though, isn't it? Because so many people pack up and go home just as the fishing is beginning to really kick off, and it almost breaks my heart sometimes that they're not going to say. I mean, I won't come off the water until I cannot tie flies anymore. I can't see, and obviously that's a little bit earlier these days than it used to be. But those hatches in the evening and that last bit before dusk when it's really boiling but you're almost casting at noises, oh, it's so special. And the hatches are phenomenal.
Yeah, that was what we loved about that. And, I left because it was just too far for me to go, and I was running a truck and the petrol was ridiculous and everything else. And I miss it. And I get to fish back there every now and again and absolutely love it. And it's different in its own way. There's something special about the test and itching. And there's something special about, for me, the Wiley and the Avon system as well, in a different way. And so that's why that one always is close to my heart, and I always enjoy going back there. So where are you going to take us next?
Did you find that you learned a lot from fishing on the Wiley?
Yeah, hell of a lot. It was really, like you said, I would stand on a bridge and look at stuff for a bit. I would look at, I've taken as guests so many people over the years, and it was fascinating to be able to watch them fish, see how they approached it. Like you say, that thing about chalk stream fishing allows you to see so much and learn so much that you can apply even if you're not fishing chalk streams as well. The behaviour of the fish, the rise forms, I think, are really important as well. So being able to see those, I think, was game changing in many respects as well. So yeah, absolutely love it. So yeah,
a day on the Wiley is always an education.
Yeah, it's not an easy fishery by any means, I have to say. So
yeah. No, it's not an easy fishery, so it's very rewarding too. So next, next, I'm going to stick with a test, but very different type of test, Broadlands, which is one of those fisheries way down on the bottom, and the river is big and it's wide, and it can be pretty intimidating down there sometimes. The fishing is brilliant though. And I think it's got some of the best fish that you'll find in the river test. They are fit and they are powerful, and they can be very, very clever. So you have to be on your game. And the actual bank itself, or it's not your refined, manicured water. I mean, it is very well kept, but it is kept in such a way that it appeals to fishermen. You've got a decent fringe there, and you can get up nice and close. And on some of the parts you can wade a bit as well, because you've got to get into certain aspects. But for me, what I love about fishing at Broadlands, I mean, the mayfly hatch can be great. It's a little earlier normally than the other parts of the river, but it's the sedge fishing. The sedge in the middle of summer. You can get down there and you can be pushing long casts across the river with fish smashing off the other bank and pulling sedges across the river. Literally, just the takes can be explosive, and then you hook into something which is going to charge off downriver. And we've even actually hit the odd sea trout on sedge at night time as well, because they've got a good run of sea trout and salmon that run up through there too. So yeah, it's a very interesting fishery. It is not your average piece of water, but I love it because it's just a little bit wilder, and presents quite a serious challenge. So it's a technical fishery.
And a wonderful fishing hut.
It does also have brilliant, and probably one of the best fishing huts of all. I mean, that old Nissen hut has just got huge character, and you could actually stay down there. In fact, maybe stay down there a lot. It's really good fun.
Yeah, I've fished there once during grayling time, and it's a big grown-up river, like you say, isn't it? And a cast to the far bank is a big cast.
It is a grown-up river. Yeah, no, it's gonna push your limits to the far bank, especially when you're trying to throw a tight loop and tuck it under one of those branches underneath some of those bends as well. There's always big fish that live under those branches, and a lot of them are big wild fish. So it's quite a special place. And as you say, the grayling fishing there in the autumn time is second to none.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Good choice, and a fascinating place to go to fish when we can get there as well. But I'm going to head up a little bit further, and I'm going to go to Derbyshire, and not really a surprise, I guess, that the Wye and the ability to catch wild or feral rainbows, however you want to describe them. And I'm sure many people smarter than me know the story as well, but a pond 100 years ago flooded, and the strain of rainbow, and I can't remember what strain it was. It wasn't Shasta, I don't think. And
Is it McLeod River?
I've got a sense it might have been McLeod. That was going to be my next guess, that got into the river and did what they do. And again, it's another place that I first visited with my friend Ray. And it struck me, I've subsequently been back, not a lot of times, but 2 or 3 times, I think. Again, really well run. And I like the system there that you can turn up and, I was getting day tickets at the Peacock Hotel. There's a lovely side story to this, that the last time I visited was with my friend Ray, as I said, and we shared a room at the Peacock, 2 singles. Our snoring was so bad that we both didn't sleep very well. So we decided we'd book into a B&B the next day, because we have a strict rule on pricing on what we will spend on a room overnight. And I tried to book, it was like 9 o'clock at night. We're on the river, and I was saying, dude, we need somewhere to sleep. We haven't got anywhere to sleep. He said, I'm sure it'll sort itself out. So I'm on the phone, and there's a lady in Ray's next to me, and I'm trying to book. I said, have you got 2 rooms? She said, yeah, absolutely. I said, can I book them? She said, what's your name? And I said, Peter. And she said, Victor? And I said, no, Peter. What, you mean Victor? And this went back and forth for quite some time. And so my friend Ray calls me Victor now, basically. Yeah, when we turned up there at 10 o'clock, 10:30, I said it's either Peter or Victor. So we managed to get that sorted out. But I love the way the fishing's organised there, that you don't book a beat. If someone's there, you can still fish as long as you follow them, or you can't wade. It's dry fly only. Some might not like that aspect of it, but I've found with the rainbows there as well, you can bring them up, and I've really, really enjoyed that. Just to say, I've caught the nearest thing, if not a wild rainbow, in the UK as well. And being a limestone river as well, you get the chance to see the fish as well, which is deeply exciting. Have you fished there?
I haven't, but Pete, it's on my bucket list, big time. In fact, I was only chatting to Andy Buckley about that at the end of last year. When he came down fishing with me, I desperately want to go up and go and fish the Wye with him and catch wild rainbows. It's totally on my bucket list. So, Andy, if you're listening, give us a call, mate.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So where's your next one?
So my last one in the UK is a fishery that I have become extremely fond of. It's again, we're in the Hampshire Valley, but this is on the Anton, and this is a tributary of the Anton. It's a little side stream that we have called Westfair, and this is where I've spent an inordinate quantity of time. In fact, actually, for those who are watching the video, that is a photograph of the mayfly hatch from last year. And it's a lovely beat that we have there, and we've got a 1,600 meter beat, which will take up to 4 to 6 rods, which is big sort of bank side area for most of the beats here. And we've got a lovely hut down there, and we've got a little marquee, and it's about 7 stretches in total, I think. Each piece has got its own character, and you can spend an entire session just fishing one section. We've got overhung tree sections. We've got sort of wide open bits that run through the meadow with willows on one side. And then the bottom bit is sort of very overhung with trees from the other side, and you get fish munching beetles up underneath there, especially at this time of year. And the mayfly there has been incredible. Both years, for the last 2 years, clouds dancing up and down through the willows and the poplars there. But it's become quite special to me. It reminds me of some of the chalk streams that I grew up fishing in Norfolk. So it's not that wide. You don't need to be able to cast a long line to fish it. And you have to be quite sneaky. So we've got a good sized fringe there. And sometimes you have to get down on your hands and knees and crawl a bit. but you can it's almost like Euro nymphing with a dry fly. You can crawl right up and you can almost get nice and close and get that dry fly on top and watch the fish's reaction. So it's become quite a special place for me. I've done a lot of guiding down there. It's got some really big grayling. I mean, we've got grayling up to 2.5 pounds at least, and probably some bigger ones. So it fishes well during the grayling season as well. So it's kept us very busy over the last 2 or 3 years. That's my last one. Don't really have anything else to say about that. It's kind of it's very lovely. You must come and fish it, Pete.
I will one day. I'm going to do a grand tour, I think, and visit all these places, because I'm thinking now I'm coming on to my last one, and there's places like the River Lee that means a lot to me that I've not mentioned. There's so many other streams, all the rivers of Wales, the rivers just outside Bristol, all those sorts of places. And it sounds as though we may be kind of similar, that those small little overgrown streams are really of something that is something I always seem to want to come back to.
Yeah, it's the challenge as well. And for me, more than anything else, it's the visual element that I love most about trout fishing here. I love being able to see my quarry, pick which fish I'm going to go for, and actually watch that fish's reaction to the flies I'm putting over. So quite often when we're fishing down here, you find a fish and you work it. So you'll go through 6, 7, 8 patterns. You could be on one fish for 45 minutes until you finally get the right thing for him to come and eat. And that's incredibly rewarding.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm with you on that. I love that. And I will sit on a fish until I catch it. And I know sometimes people just walk past me and say I'm going up there, but the thrill of, even if I don't hook it, is enough just to say, yeah, I fooled you this once. And that's what I think that's one of the things that keeps us coming back. But my last one, I'm going salmon fishing as well. And it's a river I know really well. It's the Devon. Past Aberdeen. It's a long drive from Devon. It's 10.5 hours, something like that. And I fished it. It's at the very bottom at Banff. It's called the rack fishing. And I fished it for many years. I've not fished it the last couple of years, and caught some fish there. I've seen some good times there. I've seen some not so good times there. And latterly, my wife that's where her passion for salmon really started. And however many years ago, 6, 8 years ago, she came for the first, probably longer than that now actually, came for the first time, hooked her first fish, landed her first fish. And it was a passion that began for her and that we share together to this very day. And so that means a lot to me. It's not one of the big name rivers. It's probably next down the list after the big name rivers, but I always like it. I like it that you're at the bottom of the river. So if you've got big water, the fish run through, but if the water's low, they sort of nose in and nose out. And I've had some amazing days there. I've seen, they've had huge floods there and the river's been changed dramatically. And it's just a wonderful place. I'm hoping we're in the process of sorting a trip, not to the Devon, but Emma and I are going to head north, possibly in September as well. So I'm really, really looking forward to that and hoping that comes off. But that was the starting point for something, and seeing somebody that means so much to me build a passion that is the same as well, which has been really, really good fun. So yeah, that's my last one.
Oh, that's a great one. I never caught anything on the Devon. I have to say I fished it a couple of times as a teenager, but I had more luck on the Don, funnily enough. Some great brown trout fishing on the Don as well.
Yeah, it's amazing. Early season there, I'm told, is very fine for large, sizable brown trout. Take me abroad, pack me on a plane. I kind of remember what that was like. So, where are we going to go?
Ooh, where should we go first? Again, I'll probably do this in ascending order. Sticking with the freshwater theme. What about some steelheading, Pete? Yeah. So my first one is going to be really the terrace area in British Columbia. So the Skeena system, fishing out of Nicholas Dean Outfitters. I had quite a few years of fishing up there and fishing all the tributaries. And although I love my Atlantic salmon fishing, I do love it. There's something very unique about fishing for steelhead, and especially wild steelhead. They are an incredibly potent target. I've never hooked a fish which has just rage. You get a big chrome steelhead. It's just pure rage. They're furious about the fact that you've hooked them. And I love the fact that actually you end up using smaller rods on the big water and bigger rods on the small water. Fishing main skeena is probably best done with a single-handed rod and fishing close in. If you're standing up to your knees, the fish are swimming behind you. And every single fish that's running through that system up into the Kispiox system or the Bulkley or the Maurice, they're all running through that main skeena. And I've always found that particularly challenging because you don't know what you're going to hook. And there aren't that many freshwater rivers that you can say that about. That actually you've got no idea which species you're going to tangle with, whether it's going to be, a king, a silver, a steelhead, a pink, a sockeye. You just don't know. A coho. Cohos are brutes as well. Have you hooked a coho? They're great fish, very underrated. But the steelhead, what makes that place particularly different is there's a tributary of the Skeena there called the Copper. And the Copper is very famous in steelheading terms. I know it's probably not as famous as Kispiox for big steelhead, but I had a couple of very special instances that occurred to me on that river where we had driven pretty much as far as you can on the log trail and then hiked down the side of the valley into the river system. And it's all overgrown. Lots of, it's almost, the forest there is so covered in lichen and algae that it's temperate rainforest and it's untouched. And you finally get down there. And as we got down there in the morning, it was cold because the sun was just coming down the other side of the valley. And as the sun hit the water, this was in September, mayfly began to come off. And these big green drake mayfly in these pools. And the fish began to take them. So there we were, fishing with upstream with 9-foot 7 weights, with big green drake mayfly patterns and hooking steelhead on dry fly between 12 and 18 pounds. And it was just like fishing back here. But every time you hook one, it went apoplectic. And that's probably one of the most special days steelheading I've ever had. They made a film called Raising the Ghost, which is actually filmed on that place that I was fishing a few years later. Very, very special, very unique. Doesn't always happen either. It's not one of those things where I'm going to go and do that. You're lucky to have been there to experience it. But that, catching steelhead on dry fly and downstream sort of, scuttering deer hair things as well. I mean, it's just brilliant. Really special.
Yeah, that sounds really cool. It's interesting you mentioned the Copper as well, because I think it was because of that I first became aware of steelhead, and John Wilson did a program and caught a steelhead on the Copper. So that was the first time I've seen it, and I've stayed around Terrace. I had a day on the Skeena and then headed off to the Bulkley from there. But I think they're also one of the most photogenic fish, steelhead, as well. Absolutely stunning fish.
They are gorgeous, but you've got to be careful when you try and lift them profile-wise, because as soon as they're anything other than that, they just go bonkers. They're just they've got such aggression, and I love that about them. They have everything that the big rainbows have with more. Having been at sea and gained all that extra power and energy, they're just incredible fish to fish for.
While you're on steelhead, then, I think my first choice, I'll probably, while we're chatting about them and what a special fish, and mine's the Rogue River in Oregon. And for a couple of reasons, really. But one was, and he's been a guest on the podcast, John Hazlitt, and he sniffed me out as a guide within about 12 seconds, which I really liked. And I never liked saying that's what I did or anything like that, but he sussed it within seconds. And he was such good company. We talked life, we talked fishing. He's a casting geek. He's a rod geek. And I remember one stage, he said, I've got this set up. And we ended up doing a bit of casting and talking about rod and lines and whilst fishing, of course, as well. But he made that, and it kind of ties nicely with what you're saying about doing a lot of guiding at the moment and everything else. The sign of a great fishing guide. We caught fish too, which was fabulous. And he's very good when it changed how I thought about salmon fishing a bit, bright sunshine and everything else, and we caught fish, and it was just absolutely fantastic. But I think it was made special because of him. And it's not often I will say that. I know many guides and many good guides as well. But he just had the whole thing sorted together, and the whole package, how he understood people, how he understood, he could size things up. It was a guide's choice, really, of someone. And like you say, the steelhead, phenomenal fish, beautiful fish, strong fish, and it's great to fish for them. And we went on to fish the Deschutes, and we fished some North Umpqua and other rivers too, and it was great. But that was really cool. And I think with steelhead, and it made me think of what you said about the Skeena, and we just got there, were jet lagged, tired, probably knee deep in the water, didn't catch anything. And there's a lesson. I've learned something from that. But I'd take, particularly with a fish like that, take a guide for a day, or as with John we had for a couple of days, and that gives you a chance to cover more water as well. And whether you're staying in a lodge or not, a lot of these have been self-guided things, but certainly with a lodge, you have the ability to cover lots of water. Whereas if you're self-guided, you sort of got to either join the queue, and there's nothing, I don't have an issue with doing that, or you've got to try and figure stuff out. And for me, that's always deeply interesting, trying to do that and try and work out what to do and what will work and what doesn't work, but that aspect of it. But yes, big thumbs up for steelhead. Absolutely awesome fish.
A lot of people ask me this question about guiding, about, should I go to a fully fledged operation, or should I try and do that? And I think really it boils down to time. It's time and efficiency. If you are the kind of person that has got lots of time, and that you have a lot of time in your year, then by all means, go and investigate and do it and experience it and figure it out. But if you only get 1 or 2 weeks a year to go fishing, make the most of it. So if you go with one of these operations, you are going to have a much more efficient fishing time. They will put you on the fish where they are at that time, and they will put you with the right techniques and the right methods, and you are probably going to have more success and learn more in a much more condensed space of time.
Yeah. Makes perfect sense. Where are you taking us next?
I think it's time to do some saltwater. As you know, I'm rather passionate about saltwater fishing, although I am missing the flats dreadfully at the moment. Really badly. I'm pining for the flats, like the Norwegian blue pining for the fjords. I'm pining for the flats. And the first one that springs to my mind, which I have not been to for quite a few years, is Los Roques in Venezuela, which I know that you've been to as well. I haven't been there for quite a few years, sadly, because of the state of the political situation over there. But when I was going, I went every year for 9 years. And I got to know it really well. And there is something very unique about the pancake flats that they have there. It's probably some of the best wade fishing for bonefish anywhere in the world, because you're going to fish on hard coral areas covered in turtle grass. Those pancakes are 1/2 acre to 3 acre areas of raised coral with deep water all around them, and these big bonefish come up and tail along the edges and on those flats. And stalking big bones in that kind of clarity of water with small flies, it doesn't get any better than that when you're bone fishing. It's different to fishing on sand flats entirely. You have the added structure that you have to get around. You have to use sort of flies which are not going to get caught in the grass sometimes. Sometimes you'll see the bones actually eat them off the grass. But what I loved about that was fishing those pancakes with the sun going down and all the tails glinting in the sunshine. I'm sure that you probably saw that. And a big average size of bone. And the beaches there as well were very special. But that fishery, I tell you what, I am going to be on the first plane back out there when I get the opportunity, because that fishery has had very little pressure for a long time now. And I think the permit will be back in the central lagoon system. The tarpon will be back in there as well. And I want to get back on those flats. Very special. And those pelicans. Remember the pelicans? I mean, it's the only place that you can dry fly fish for bones. So we used to use floating minnows and then twitch them. And then you get a tern would come down and stoop over the top of it. And as it stooped, you just twitch it a bit. And the turn going up and down was enough to attract the big bones that would then come up and eat it off the surface. Very unique bone fishing. Very different. So, yeah.
Yeah. Like you say, the pelicans, I remember seeing big bonefish as pelicans dive down into because it's these massive bait balls. The pelicans dive in, come up, and they've got little bait fish coming out the side of their minnows, coming out of their beak. The bonefish are going to the pelican and eating the bonefish out of the bill. Or where they drop them. Yeah, literally, it is one of the most amazing fishing sites you'll probably ever see, and one that I will never, ever forget. The thing I've got to throw in as well is the false albacore. You say all the wonderful things, and I managed to hook a great big tarpon from the beach, but the false albacore were unbelievable fun as well. There was just, like you say, the package of everything, it's all coming vividly back to me now, but the package of...
I can see your eyes are just lit up.
Yeah, the fishing that is available and the variety, and like you say, I remember getting eaten alive because I forgot to put stuff on when you go into the lagoons and catching bits and pieces in there. The albacore, the tarpon,
baby tarpon and snook.
You got it, and yeah, absolutely phenomenal fishery and really, really interesting one to visit. So I hope you get to go there before too long. It's just a phenomenal place, and yeah.
And such special people living on that island. And I miss them all. Such special people. Where are we going next, Pete?
Well, let's stay in the saltwater vein then. And this place I've chosen because people listening may not be able to always get a fishing holiday, but they may like to tag fishing on. And like you say, people are time precious, and it may be their one trip, so they're going to a lodge or whatever, or it may be they have to combine something with a family holiday. And I did this once, and I'm never one, I think often you keep fishing and family holidays apart. But I think this place, to me, lent itself really well. And I don't know if you've been there, but it's Tobago.
No, I've never been there, actually.
And it's a place that we were there for 10, 12 days, something like that. And I found a guide out there. I knew some people who'd been down there. And there was a guide called Kester Herbert down there. And he'd take you out. And the great thing about this, I don't know if he's still there or not, I've not looked, but the great thing was that he'd pick me up at like 4:15 in the morning, we'd do a half day of fishing, then I could be back for breakfast with Emma and our daughter Charlie as well. And so it didn't sort of get in the way of anything there, so it fitted really well. And I remember it for a number of reasons. I shot at permit. I remember Kester in the praying position as I made what I felt was a perfect cast to a permit. And yet again, it refused me and swam off quite relaxed. And no, I'm not having that, but I'm gone. I caught tarpon to about 30 pound, 35 baby tarpon. I saw huge ones as well. Bait balls similar to those that you mentioned in Venezuela. So that attracted those species in. I caught bonefish and all of that before I had breakfast in the morning, which for me was absolutely phenomenal. So worked really, really well. I don't know if the operation's working there still or if there's people doing that, but it was kind of cool. You needed a boat to be able to get to the better points, but I know people who have found spots and caught fish there. So really, really interesting place to go visit.
No, I mean that sounds interesting. It's always been one that's on my radar, but because of the nature of what I do, without any fully operational or big proper outfits, if you like, it's not one that I've ever really been able to qualify to go and explore. But it's always been there in the back of my mind. But following on from that one, talking about family destinations or potential destinations for family, I'm going to stick with salt, and we're going to go look at Belize. You remember at the beginning of this chat, we were talking about what it feels like when you took Emma up to the Devon and she caught her first salmon and sharing that experience. I've been doing this for a long time now, and it suddenly became massively obvious to me that the people that I needed to share this with more than anybody else was my own family. My wife has always fished. Well, she would have to by default, being married to me, sadly. But she's always loved her bone fishing and her saltwater fishing. So a couple of years ago, we took our children, who were then 7 and 10, and we took them to Turniff Flats Lodge in Belize, which just was an incredible experience for them. And Turniff is a unique destination, being that it's one of those few atolls in the Caribbean that has similar flats structure to Los Roques. So it is hard coral with turtle grass. It's got great permit fishing. It's got baby tarpon, and it is such a slick, well-run operation. Craig and Karen Hayes have been there for, I think, 25 or 30 years running Turniff Flats, and it has grown and grown and grown and evolved, and now it is slick as you like. So to take the kids out there and to get on the flats with them, we had 2 skiffs, and to involve them in what I truly love and watch them come alive as they bombed around in skiffs and fished with guides and hooked bonefish. I mean, my 10-year-old son at that point, he was casting 20 yards and hooking bonefish by himself. And, I can't help but feel a sort of slight twang of pride. And that he got as much of a kick out as I did. But to do that experience as a family was pretty special. And I think it's one I'll remember forever. I think they will too. I hope that they fully appreciate how incredibly spoiled and lucky they were. It's not something that's going to happen on a regular basis. So that would be my next one, Turniff Flats in Belize.
Nice. I've not been there. I fished in Belize a few times and taken people down there, and it's a wonderful place. Great and varied fishing. And yeah, like you say, a pretty good place to go catch permit as well, really, isn't it?
It's a great permit destination. It really is. I mean, they've got good numbers on those flats, and to be able to stalk them, quite often you can wade to them. And there's not that many places you can wade to tailing permit.
Yeah, like that a lot. I'm going to go to North America. I'm going to go to Colorado. I'm going to go to the Frying Pan near Basalt. And I've been lucky to do a bit of fishing in North America and love it very, very much. And, I guess, I don't know if you may have this on the list, you may not. And I've been lucky enough to fish in New Zealand, and I understand why people want to do that and why they want to tick it. But I kind of like North America. I like the fishing culture. I like everything else about it. And this was just, we happened to be touring around. We'd fished many rivers around there. And again, this is my friend Ray. And there was a storm brewing. And we were staying right by the river, and the fish were just alive. They obviously knew something was going down, whether it was barometric pressure, the bugs knew it, and it was just one of those moments where everything, the planets aligned, and the fishing was amazing. There weren't memorable fish. We caught a number of them. They weren't sizable. There was just something about that moment that I always remember incredibly well. And so I like that. The other reason I like it is that we play this silly game when we're on fishing holidays, and that is how many places you can walk into with waders and somebody doesn't look at you strangely. And we've walked around supermarkets pushing a trolley in waders. We've been into a Chinese takeaway in waders, all sorts of weird and wonderful stuff. And we walked into a restaurant in Basalt, and they didn't even blink an eyelid. And I thought, we must get a reaction. They didn't. It's a proper fishing town. And I think that's why I'm circling around that as well, in a small way, that versus New Zealand. And as I said, I get the arguments for New Zealand, that there's no complaint from me about that, but I like the culture as a whole of fishing towns, and that's why I like that so much. So it's a special place. It was a special moment on the river on a special trip, and we got to walk into a restaurant wearing waders and they didn't bat an eyelid, so I kind of like that too.
I think that sounds like a really cool game. I think I might have to start playing that. Yeah, no, that's a cool game. Yeah, I do get what you mean, though. I mean, that fishing town or fishing community, I mean, you feel like you immediately fit in. It's like some places you go in Iceland, or, some, even, I suppose even Stockbridge down here, in the main part of the fishing sea. All the cars have got rod racks on them. You see people wandering around in fishing kit the entire time, and you just feel like there's that buzz and everybody's getting excited about the same thing. It's very contagious.
Yeah. I think it's only for me been eclipsed, and you're dead right about Stockbridge, particularly Mayfly time, but you see all the people walking in and out the shops there, the people in fishing shirts. I think it's only been topped for me in Montana in a place called Ennis, which is pretty much a one-street town on the Madison. Everyone's wearing fishing gear, walking up and down there. It's right on the Madison. The Madison's out the back there and curves around the town as well. And that sort of feel to me, like you say, I feel comfortable. I feel like I've come home, and I absolutely love it. So yeah, that's a big part of it for me.
When you were in Terrace, did you go to the petrol station?
Is that the one with the fishing shop in it?
Yeah. It's the best stock tackle petrol station I have ever seen. Sims waders, it's got Sage, Sims, Rio. It had absolutely everything you could possibly imagine, and the fly selections in there are brilliant. So you go get gas and then get all your gear and then wander out.
Yep, absolutely. Where are we going next?
So next, we're going to Iceland. So there's a river that I have fished up there since the early 2000s called Laxey-Kjos. And Laxey-Kjos is about 45 minutes outside of Reykjavik. It's very easy to get at. It's a west coast river, and it is the nearest thing that you're going to come to trout fishing for salmon. So it is lots of tiered rock pools in both the top section, canyon section, and the lower section, these rock bands which create these fantastic pools, and you can creep out onto the top of the ledges and look down into the pools and see the salmon, and they're all fresh as a daisy. And what makes that fishery completely unique and different to a lot of the other fisheries that you find on the west coast is they have a huge meadow section, and the meadows has an incredible run of sea trout, which is one of those things that not many people associate with Iceland. there are some really good sea trout spots. And when I mean good sea trout, I mean 10 to 15 pound sea trout. And they run in towards the end of July and into August. And the meadow section there, they keep as a free beat. So it's outside of the normal salmon fishing rotation. And you can go and try, or the best methods for catching those sea trout is dead drift clink hammers. And you can hit them on the surface, or you can fish small upstream nymphs and like sort of size 14s, really small nymphs for these massive sea trout. And it's just very unique. It adds a whole different facet to your fishery. And if the salmon fishing is not firing, then you can go and have a crack at the sea trout. And I know a lot of people, myself included, who've actually become rather obsessed with fishing for the sea trout rather than the salmon. But the salmon fishing is brilliant as well. And you're fishing with sort of 9'6" 6 weights and tiny hitch tube flies. So you can actually see that tube scuttering across the surface and watch those salmon come up. And again, we go back to that. What is exciting for me about fly fishing? It's the visual element, and it's being able to observe my quarry and their reaction to the fly patterns I'm putting over. And the salmon fishing in Iceland, and especially this river, is totally unique for that. So you can actually watch that fish as it flicks its pectoral fins and whether it's going to come up, or sometimes they'll just come smashing across the pool and hit those tiny hitch tube flies. I don't know why they find them so incredibly irritating, but they do. And to do that on light tackle, it's technical fishing. And actually, when the water's really low, you can upstream nymph for them. One of the guides there is on the Czech ladies team, Katka, and she's been incredibly successful in teaching clients how to upstream Czech nymph for salmon. So it's just different. It's not your bog standard 45-degree down angle and across kind of fishing. And you've got to be stealthy. You can't just walk up to the pools and start flailing away because all the fish get upset. And it's just very different and really exciting. So that's probably my next one, and why I love fishing in Iceland so much.
Yeah, you got me with that one. I mean, that sounds dry flies for sea trout. I love anyway. I love doing it here. And yeah, all that sort of stuff. Sight fishing with nymphs for salmon sounds fantastic fun. All of that stuff. I think that sounds wonderful fishing. I'm going to go, while you're talking about sea trout, and again, this is intertwined with my friend Ray because he lived in Wiltshire, married a Danish lady, Christina, and they moved to Denmark. And being someone I was heartbroken when he moved there, but then discovered, as he did, sea trout. Yeah. And that's really, really good fun. And I've been doing that since he's lived there, once, possibly twice a year, in the sea, in the fjords, and just for fun. It's like the equivalent, I guess, of bass fishing over here, but with sea trout, to a degree. But I just absolutely love every aspect of it. Sometimes they beat us up, sometimes they don't. I've sort of got it dialed in a little bit. I try left field stuff and it's worked. Sometimes it doesn't. But I just find it fantastic. It's mainly I go over there for Thanksgiving, and because he's American, so we have Thanksgiving in Denmark, perversely. But it's cold. It's hard. You earn them, and sometimes we eat huge, great cinnamon rolls and good coffee to start the day, and have about 1,000 calories just to get us kick-started. And then you get out into this cold environment, and then you find these sea trout, and it is just fantastic fun. I absolutely love it.
And that's wading kind of in the surf, isn't it? Yeah, I mean, that kind of thing massively appeals to me. I no doubt you burn all those thousands of calories through the course of the morning as well.
Yeah, you really do. And it's the mixture I like. If conditions don't allow in the sea, you go to the fjords and go fish the fjords. I really enjoy fishing the fjords as well. They're so big, it's like fishing the sea anyway. But it's really great fun, and it kind of reminds me, I said on a podcast recently, of Colliford Lake actually, and it's a similar sort of affair, and that's how I suddenly clicked with it and thought, this is like Colliford. I'm going to fish it like I'd fish Colliford. Put a little shrimp dropper on, threw it out, got a double hook up, then got another, and then it was just fantastic fun to do that. And again, I think I'm like you, that I like testing myself as an angler the whole time and playing with things and trying to understand why I'm catching fish or why I'm not catching fish. And that for me, I think, is why I still shake as somebody who's done a fair bit of fishing with excitement still, because I find it interesting still.
I mean, that sounds absolutely brilliant. I'd love to go and do that. Actually, I'd really like to go and fish Colliford as well. I heard your previous podcast while you were fishing down there. That really appeals to me as well. I shall go and escape down there, maybe take my son, I think.
Yeah, it's great fun. Great fun. I can heartily recommend it. So I guess we're on to our last choice, aren't we? And where are you going to go for your last choice?
I think it's going to have to be some GTs. It has to be. You know, I am totally obsessed with that species. And the one people have asked me, if there was one place you could go and fish before you died, where would it be? And I can answer that question in a heartbeat. It's Providence Atoll in the Seychelles. It's a no-brainer. So of all of the atolls in the Seychelles, Providence is one of the biggest. It's the least explored. And you have this vast array of flats to go and hunt giant trevally, bumphead parrotfish, triggerfish, bonefish, milkfish. You've got sailfish about 200 yards off the edge if you want to go and do those. And what appeals to me about this place more than anything else is it is totally isolated and totally untouched. So when we go there, we go on a mothership, which we pick up from Farquhar Atoll, and we go and live on board a boat for the whole week. There is no Wi-Fi. There is no telephones. There is no contact. Well, there's the emergency sat phone, but apart from that, there's no contact with the outside world. And you literally get up, go fishing, eat, go to bed. And it is fish, repeat. But what makes it really unique when it comes to giant trevally fishing is you have these enormous turtle grass flats. So rather than fishing some of that really rough granitic coral, you are able to sight fish for big GTs on rays. So no doubt in the Caribbean, you've fished for permit on top of rays, where they hang around the back of the ray and then they take advantage of whatever it's scuffling up. GTs do exactly the same thing. And you see them come off the ocean and they're a kind of blue color. And then they come across the flats, they'll find a ray and they just turn black. And you could hardly see them. And some of these fish are big. You know, we're talking, 60, 70 pound fish. And to be able to put that fly in and then see it charge out and smash it is very, very unique. And then you fish in the surf line. And the surf line is, when you're fishing for your sea trout, it's a similar situation, but quite often you're up to your waist in water. Occasionally you've got waves crashing over the top of your head, and what you're looking for is, as the wave comes up, you can see the GTs surfing down the inside of the wave. It's like a window into their environment as the wave comes up, and then you've got to try and get your cast over the top of the wave and get that fly down, and then you hit that fly out there. And to hit a fish in that environment, especially a fish which is as powerful as a giant trevally, you really feel like you're fighting it on its own turf. And obviously you've got to be slightly aware of the other big toothy things that swim around in exactly the same environment. So keeps you on your toes and makes you feel very alive, very alive. But an atoll like that, which has probably doesn't get more than maybe 40, 50 fishermen in a year. That's it. And this atoll is, it's, if you're parked in the middle of it, you can't see the islands on either end. It's that big, and the whole sections of it, which man has never walked on. We're still exploring it and still finding it. So I'm heading back down there, I think, in the autumn time. and it'll be the first time I've been in 2 years because it's been shut. No one's been able to go. I'm already not sleeping at night because I'm too excited. And I think of those flats and those fish which they just haven't seen anybody. It's going to be, I don't know what the word to describe it is. It's going to be completely epic. So yeah, I'm very, very excited about that. But it had to be GTs for me for my last one. I've got such a passion for them.
I'd have been disappointed if it wasn't, given that you've written a book on them. So I'm pleased to hear that. That sounds really interesting fishing and different, like you say, exhilarating, and for all the right reasons and the things that bring us back to this pastime time and time again, be they moments like that or a little trout rising on a stream somewhere. It's these sorts of moments that make us love what we're doing, isn't it?
I couldn't agree more. And I think what I love about this sport or this lifestyle of ours, if you like, it's so completely all encompassing. You can go out on the same piece of water day after day and have a completely different experience. You can go to new fisheries. You can take the skills that you learn from one and you can apply them to another. And every time you go, it's different. And I think that is one thing that it constantly keeps me excited. It constantly keeps me learning. I'm learning every single day. I'm learning from other people. I'm learning from guides. I'm learning from getting it wrong. And each time you can then apply that the next time you find yourself in that situation. Oh, well, that might work this time because that kind of worked back in 2003. Yeah, it's it never gets boring. It never gets dull.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. I'm with you that. Well, I'm going to start winding it up with my last one. North America again, Montana this time. There are so many places that I've been lucky enough to visit there. The area around Bozeman, in the park, when that goes down into Wyoming as well, obviously. But I love Missoula. Missoula isn't as well known probably in the UK, certainly as, let's say, Bozeman. But it has the Bitterroot, the Blackfoot, and the stream I wanted to talk about is Rock Creek as well. There is another Rock Creek if you go over the Beartooth, I think it's a Beartooth Pass, and head into the outskirts of the park. There's a Rock Creek there. But this one is just outside Missoula, and it's just a wonderful, honest stream with some really nice hatches, some really nice fish, really beautiful. And for me, the reason I say this and Missoula in that is that whole fishing field, the Clark Fork, of course, I forgot to mention, runs through Missoula itself, great big river. And, I've been sitting there in the town watching people fish there, and everything about it, I think in another life I'd probably end up there. It's got a university there, so it's got a young feel to it, slightly bohemian, slightly arty, and there were many aspects of it I liked. There was a shop there, the Grizzly Hackle. There's lots of shops there, but I remember the Grizzly Hackle because Ray and I would go and have a coffee and a bowl of porridge in the morning, and there was a door from the coffee shop into the fly shop. And that was kind of cool. You're in a fishing town when stuff like that happens. So everything that goes with it. And so, again, it's really interesting, isn't it, as we wind this up now, that it's the experiences that you share with friends, family, that we've centered around on this. And sharing those experiences with those people, to me at least, and I suspect to you, is part of that whole process as well, isn't it?
I couldn't agree more. I think we've both been lucky enough to do an enormous amount of fishing over the years. And these days, it's not the fishing that really gets me going and gets me excited. It is sharing that with other people who haven't had a chance to do it, and watching their face come alive and watching them get the same kind of kick out of this that we do. And I think that is what really drives me these days. And I'm more often these days going to pick up a camera than a rod. And I love photographing those moments and trying to capture those moments. And I don't think that'll ever change.
No, it is. I think it is, and I've touched on it so many times in this, that as you get older, you look at a bigger picture of stuff and the whole experience of it. And it may be a function of having done a fair bit of it as well comes into that. And I was thinking about yesterday when I was fishing with Perry, and he said, "Oh, it's your go, bud." And I said, "You know what? I'm just really enjoying you watching you cast that bamboo rod and the line go out and the fish rise. I'm fine at the moment. I'll let you know." And it changes, doesn't it?
It does. It's just being in these places, and fly fishing for me has taken me on an incredible journey all around the world. I have set foot in places which I never would have otherwise. I've experienced people and cultures that I never would have otherwise. And I'd like to think it's broadened my perspective and my horizons significantly. And it's almost difficult to put into words. So yeah, no, it's this passion, this culture that we have. I'm glad to be a part of it.
Pete, it's been lovely as always to catch up with you. I know we stayed in touch throughout all of this, and I've been thinking about yourself and people in the industry who have been affected, as many people have, by the pandemic. And it's great that everything looks as though it's starting to open up for you now. So I hope everything plays out as we hope it will. If people want to go travel abroad, how do they get hold of you?
The easiest way is just to come straight through to www.aardvarkmcleod.com, or just call us 01980 847 389, or mail us at mail@aardvarkmcleod.com. And we'd be delighted to assist, whether it's planning an international trip for when this is all over. I think 2022, I think it looks like it's going to be the time that we can start traveling in some capacity of normality. I think that we will have more hoops to jump through, but then I think, like all of these things, we'll just get used to it, and it'll just be part of how we travel. You'll get your COVID test, you'll do all of that, and you'll go through, and then you'll do your traveling, and then you'll come back and repeat the process. And every time something like this happens, we adapt, we move on, and it then becomes part of our normal raison d'etre.
Cool. Well, it's been lovely to chat. Thank you. It's been really interesting talking about places that mean so much to us and being able to share that with people. So thank you for taking time off of the river to speak with me today. I've really, really enjoyed it.
It's been an absolute pleasure catching up with you. And thank you for asking me again.
You're welcome. Everyone, this has been Pete McLeod. This has been the Fly Culture Podcast. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen. Thank you for sending us the messages and suggestions for guests. I listen to them all. I reply to every single one of them. So thank you so much. I greatly appreciate it. And I'm thrilled that you're still enjoying the podcast after all this time. So thanks very much indeed for listening.
The Fly Culture Podcast is brought to you in association with Fly Culture, a quarterly print magazine. For more information, please visit flyculturemag.com. You can also find Fly Culture on Instagram, Facebook and Twitter.